All right, everyone, quiet down. You're in the Rybrary, and there's no talking in the Rybrary. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Rybrary. I'm your librarian. Hope you're all doing great today. I'm here today to participate in the Mid-Year Freakout Tag. The Mid-Year Freakout Tag is a sort of a Booktube tradition where there's a list of questions that gets passed around regarding your reading habits for the year and what you've read and what you think about it. And it's a lot of fun. So I'm going to be doing my first ever Mid-Year Freakout Tag today. There's 16 questions, so I'm going to be answering those 16 in this video, and I hope you enjoy it. So the first question is best book you've read so far this year. I am going to be doing a video reviewing my top 10 favorite reads of the year so far, and that'll be coming here in the next week or two, but I guess I'll just give a little preview / spoiler of what's at the top of that list. And my favorite read of the year is The Troop by Nick Cutter. Devastating book. Very powerful, very horrific, very emotional. This is just horror, and it is wonderful. So I read Nick Cutter's other book, one of his other books called The Deep earlier this year and loved it. And then this is, considered his most popular novel, so I had to pick it up and check it out, and it was even better. Not for the faint of heart, surely. It's about a troop of Boy Scouts and their scoutmaster who go on sort of a camping trip and are having a nice time until a stranger comes to their camp, and he seems to be infected with some kind of contagion, and things spiral out of control from there. It's just great. Next question is best sequel that I've read this year, and I don't have a physical copy here, but the best sequel that I've read this year is Caliban's War, the second book in the Expanse series. It's a sci-fi space opera series. Yeah, I loved this book, not quite as much as the first one, which was just like so good, such a great introduction to the series, but yeah, really good. Introduced some great new characters. I think that's like the best contribution of this book, is that it introduced Christian Avrasarala, the badass grandma politician, and Bobby Draper, the badass Martian soldier. Caliban's War doesn't necessarily advance the plot a huge amount from the first book. It's more of a fleshing out the world kind of entry in the series, but it's really great, and I'm really looking forward to checking out Abaddon's Gate, the third one. Question number 3 is favorite reread of the year. I've only had one so far, and I'm currently rereading it, actually, so this question is easy for me, and that is The Two Towers. Obviously, the second book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, what is there to say? It's the Lord of the Rings. The template for all fantasy, the reason that fantasy as a genre exists, as a codified, formalized genre. Actually, hold on. So I'm not actually reading this edition. I'm listening to the audiobook narrated by Andy Serkis, who is wonderful, obviously. He's Andy Serkis, he's Gollum, so. But I figured I would just show you this cool edition that I've had since I was like 12 or something. I haven't even cracked it open in a long time, actually, because it's just too nice for actually reading. I think that The Two Towers is maybe the best entry in the series. It contains some of the best moments. It contains obviously the Battle of Helm's Deep, which is the best battle in Lord of the Rings. It introduces us to the Ents. It has Gandalf's return as Gandalf the White, and it has the iconic ending with, iconic to me, a battle against Shelob, which when I was a kid and I read this after seeing The Fellowship of the Ring. I read all 3 of them, and then when the Two Towers movie came out, I was really bummed that the Shelob part was not included it's how the third movie opens, is how they decided to do it, obviously for time reasons, but it's such a great ending, And it's such a great cliffhanger. You think Frodo is dead after that, and that Sam is going to have to finish off the quest. And again, Andy Serkis's narration is so good. Question number 4 is genre you've been loving. My answer to this is horror. It's the genre that seems to, I've mentioned this before in videos, but, I respond most strongly to things that's, light my imagination up or set my imagination on fire. And horror is something that does that really well at this point in my life. Question number 5, new release you haven't read yet but want to. And what I picked for this was Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I actually won this in a giveaway. Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time, which is his book that he's most famous for, I read last year and was hands down my favorite book of the year. So powerful, so thought-provoking, and it just makes you feel so much. Like it just evokes such intense feelings about humanity and human nature, and the boundaries for us to connect with people who, or with those that aren't like us. It's got such a great ending. So I haven't actually read another Tchaikovsky book since that, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to reading several Tchaikovsky books. I'll be mentioning another one of them later on in this video. By the way, I don't actually even know what Shroud is about. I try and go into things blind where possible, and I haven't really looked at the summary or anything like that. I'm just going to go start reading it when I get there. Question number 6 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And for me, this is The End of the World as We Know It, which is a short story anthology of short stories that take place in the world of Stephen King's The Stand, his post-apocalyptic classic work. Yeah, they've gotten a bunch of really big name authors on this thing. We've got Wayne Brady, Poppy Z. Bright, Nat Cassidy, S.A. Cosby, Tanner Dew, Alma Katsu, Joe R. Lansdale, Ronald Malfi, Paul Tremblay. Yeah, this thing is just super stacked with big names from horror and outside of horror. This is just a really cool thing. I love short. One thing I love about horror in general is that it lends itself well to short fiction, and just getting to see other prominent writers' takes on this world that has become so iconic is really exciting to me, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. Question number 7 is biggest disappointment, and I have 2 for this. The first of which is Children of Dune by Frank Herbert. Yeah, the first Dune is one of my favorite books I've ever read. It just, nearly perfect. While I didn't love Dune Messiah, I think the decisions that Frank Herbert made with regard to how the story progresses are really good and were the right ones. It just, unfortunately, the execution didn't really work for me. And I think in this, it just strays even further from being good. It's very weird, very slow, very heavily philosophical, which I like, but which is just nearly incomprehensible at points. I don't know if I'm actually going to even keep going with this series. I probably will at some point, but if this is any indication of and I hear that it is sort of, it just gets weirder, and if this is any indication of that, I don't really know if I want to. I might just try and keep my good feelings about the original Dune in my head. And the other disappointment for me was Acceptance by Jeff Vandermeer, the third book in the Southern Reach trilogy, which I guess is now the Southern Reach quadrilogy. I had a strong feeling I wasn't going to like this, and, that's how it was. It was right. I originally saw the Annihilation movie that's based on Annihilation, the first book in this trilogy, and I loved it. It's one of my favorite movies of the last decade. And then I read the book, and it's not quite as good, but still pretty good. And then in the second book, Authority, it just careens downhill. and, doesn't get any better with acceptance. It's very strange in not an engaging way. It's very dull. I'm actually honestly sort of surprised these books are as popular as they are, because they're I don't really see anything that like a mainstream audience would cling to in these books. Uh, their popularity is still sort of baffling to me. So yeah, that's a huge bummer. It's some people call it cosmic horror. It's not really, but it has tinges of that, and I was hoping to love this series for that reason, and I just don't care for it at all, unfortunately. Question number 8, biggest surprise. For biggest prize, I selected And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. The first Agatha Christie book I've ever read, but a story that I'm very familiar with. I actually, in high school, did some student directing or assistant directing, whatever, of plays, and this is one of the plays we did, and so I know that the story is ingrained in my memory, and it was such a fun experience. I say this is a surprise because I expected to read this and to like maybe get some fond feelings back about it, which I did, but not for it to be necessarily like great, but it was great. It's very dark, almost horror leaning a little bit here and there. The characters are great, and like I knew what was going to happen. Like I know how the story progresses, and I still loved it, and still was on the edge of my seat. So yeah, the surprise is that it managed to be so effective, despite the fact that I know it so well, and despite the fact that it's a pretty old book. I didn't necessarily expect to be affected so much by something from that long ago, even though there are examples of things of that age that I love, but tends to be less so for sure. Maybe I should use this as an opportunity to remind myself to not have preconceived notions about things of a certain age, works of a certain age. Question 9 is favorite new author, either new as in debuting or new to you, and that's also got to be Nick Cutter. Yeah, I plan on reading everything that he's written. I like him so much I might read some of his non-horror stuff. Nick Cutter is not his real name; that's a pen name. The author's real name is Craig Davidson, and he tends to write his non-horror stuff under that name and other pen names. But I'm absolutely going to be reading everything that he's written as Nick Cutter. Yeah, just great modern horror. So question 10 is newest fictional crush. And I actually do have an answer for that, and that's the one of the protagonists by the name of Jeremy Frears in this book, The Ceremonies by T.E.D. Klein. This is a horror book from the 80s that I read earlier this year and loved. And one of the protagonists, Jeremy Frears, is a graduate student / adjunct professor who is spending his summer outside of New York City, where he lives in rural New Jersey. So the way Jeremy is described physically is kind of appealing to me. My brain kind of attaches faces for characters in stuff that I'm reading, and for this I was picturing the actor Rich Sommer, who plays Harry Crane in Mad Men. He's probably most well known for, and he's a very attractive man to me. Yeah, the way Jeremy Frears seems very endearing as a person. He's kind of a smart ass. He's a literature professor who is spending the summer reading a bunch of horror books. So that was really cool to me. And he's textured. While you're rooting for him as a protagonist, he's also can be kind of a jerk here and there, and giving that texture to him as a real person really made me, feel like I got to know him, and made him an attractive figure for me. Question number 11 is newest favorite character. I have a few here. One hero, one villain, and one somewhere in the middle. So first is Christian Avasarala from The Expanse, who I mentioned earlier. She's just like such a badass, and like just does not take shit from anyone, and is just like, you know, cool grandma. You just instantly fall in love with her as a character. So the villain is Shelley Dupre. I think Dupre is the last name, but his first name is definitely Shelley. From the troop. This is one of the kids in the troop. After the book gets going, you start to gradually realize that this kid is a true blue psychopath. You're given, early on little glimpses of the fact that he's, a psychopath. And when the situation starts to devolve and the horror starts to ramp up, he's like right in the thick of it. And he's a young teen. So he's not at the point like where he quite has learned how to blend in the way that adult psychopaths tend to be portrayed. He's just kind of like a kid in a candy store and starts to do unreal, horrific things, and is just very, upsetting as a character to watch the way his part of the story unfolds. And the third one, the not quite hero, maybe an anti-hero, whatever you want to say, is Sandan Glokta from the first Law trilogy. Sandan Glokta is the only thing after reading the first book in the series, The Blade itself, is like really the only thing that was keeping me around. Like I liked it well enough, but the only great thing about The Blade itself is Sandan Glokta. He's a crippled torturer. He works for the Inquisition in the country where this takes place. Hearing his thoughts and ruminations on everything about the world in the First Law is some of the best stuff that the series has to offer. Number 12, book that made you cry. Nothing has actually made me cry. I don't really tend to cry in that much in books. Maybe I will. I hope something can affect me to that degree at some point, but it hasn't happened with anything that I've read ever in my life, I don't think. But yeah, I would say The Troop also came closest to making me cry. It certainly made me feel, powerful, heavy emotions. Book that made you happy is number 13 on the list. I have two here. First one is Shoggoths in Bloom, which is a short story collection by Elizabeth Bear, a sci-fi and fantasy writer who has written novels. I haven't read any of her novels or series, and is also incidentally the wife of Scott Lynch, who writes the Gentleman Bastards books, of which I'm a huge fan. I read the title story, Shoggoths in Bloom, in a different collection some years ago, and I loved it. It kind of stuck out like a sore thumb in that collection because it's a Lovecraftian horror collection, and this does include, it includes Shoggoths, so it's Lovecraftian in that way, but it's very different tonally. It's got so much heart, and that's kind of the through line with all of these stories, is that there's so much heart. She evokes strong feelings in you in all of these stories, which, some are sci-fi, some are fantasy, some are neither, but they're all have this through line of heart. And reading this collection really made me a full-on believer in Elizabeth Bear, and I'm absolutely going to be reading more of her stuff in the future. The other one that I wanted to mention with books that made me happy was Tales of the Sea, which I reviewed on the channel. It's just a fun, light thing, which also had a lot of heart, and kind of reminded me that not everything I read has to be heavy or dense with themes. I mean, it does have themes, but it doesn't need to be. It can just be fun and also not feel, cheap or pointless. Question number 14 is most beautiful book that you've bought or received. And I don't know about beautiful, but I love This is called The Hungry Moon by Ramsey Campbell. It's another 80s horror novel, Lovecraftian cosmic horror novel. I haven't read it yet. Really looking forward to it. And I just love this cover. I went out of my way to find a version with this cover on eBay. And just like in general, the same with, where did I put it? And with the ceremonies, like this is a really obviously super beat up cover. And you might not even be able to really tell from the video that it's like a tree right here. But I just like these, 80s and 90s printings of these kinds of books look so cool, and I just love the size. I love the like trade paperback size that can fit in your hand, and it's kind of a bummer to me that that's kind of gone the way of the dodo. Yeah, I just love this cover. I don't know if you would consider it beautiful, but I do. Question number 15 is books you need to read by the end of the year. And I have 3 picked out here for this. So I'm doing a project called My Novel Life, where you read a book from every year of your life in order. A couple weeks ago, actually, I read the first one of those, Lightning by Dean Koontz from 1988, which was okay. Didn't love it, but I mostly wanted to get that out of the way so that I could read this, Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, which came out in 1989. This is a classic of historical fiction. People love it, rave about it, and it sounds really cool. I'm really excited to dig into it. It's pretty long book. It's about the building of a cathedral over generations in medieval England, and that sounds like a really cool premise to me. And it seems like the amount that people love it, it's got to be pretty good, right? So yeah, that's one, Pillars of the Earth. Another one is, I mentioned him earlier, Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky, the sequel to Children of Time, which I am very excited to get to. There's also a third in this series called Children of Memory, and definitely want to check that out too. Hopefully like this a lot. I know that like some people said that this isn't as good as Children of Time, but if it's even somewhat close, I'll appreciate it, because Children of Time was just fantastic. And the last one is Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. I really want to try and actually finish the Farseer trilogy before the end of the year, and so at the very least, I'm gonna get to the second one, Royal Assassin. Okay, and the final question is favorite book community members. So there's about 6 booktubers who I watch religiously who are really responsible for me wanting to do this channel and to connect with others about books in this format, because I just love the content that they make. The first is CriminOlly. He does, as his tagline says, he does crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. He reads a lot. He reads a ton of books. So he's just got a great wealth of experience and knowledge, and I'm a huge fan of his channel. Also, Paperback Journeys. Of all these people, he's the one I maybe relate to personally the most. He's around my age. He just puts a lot of time and effort into his videos, and it's always like a fun experience to watch his videos and to see like the cool effects that he uses and that kind of thing. Red Fury Books is really good too. He reviews a lot of historical fiction, a lot of fantasy, a lot of crime fiction. He does a lot of interesting stuff. Like he did a video where he tried to come up with an objective formula for figuring out who his favorite author was. It's a really interesting video, and he does a lot of stuff like that. So Red Fury Books. Another one is Bookpilled. This guy talks about a lot of classic sci-fi and fantasy, like pre-80s, your Asimovs, your Heinleins, that kind of thing. And he's kind of, doesn't pull any punches with his feelings about things, and I kind of appreciate that about his reviews. He's not afraid to say, when he thinks something is stupid, and I appreciate that honesty. Rammel Broadcasting is another good one. He talks about sci-fi a lot more, maybe more on the modern side, and finally Andy Kent, who talks a lot about horror and maybe some like corners of horror that I'm less familiar with. So she's a good source to go to for me for checking out stuff that I maybe wouldn't think to check out in the world of horror. And I will absolutely link all of these channels in the description because, like I said, they all inspire me to do this, and I would love for you to check out their channels as well. Okay, that is it. That is the end of the mid-year freakout tag for me. I would love to hear in the comments what your answers to these questions are, and I would love to hear from you in general about what you like about this video, what you like about what I've done in this channel so far, what you'd like to see more of. Please subscribe if you haven't, and thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a great day.